Hello and welcome to the Raw podcast brought to you by the Sunderland Echo. And today we're going to be looking ahead to Sunderland's championship fixture against Stoke City at the Stadium of Light. So to preview the match, joining myself, Joe Nicholson, we are joined by Angela Smith from BBC Radio Stoke. Angela, how's things?
Things are very good and it's great to be with you. Thank you for inviting me.
Well, we're looking forward to what's going to be an interesting match on Saturday. Of course, it is the return of Alex Neil to the Stadium of Light, the first time he's been back there after leaving Wearside around 6 months ago. And just looking at the results, Angela, looks like it's been a bit of a struggle for Alex Neil since he's gone in at Stoke. Looking at just on the results basis, he's won 9 in the Championship, drawn 6 and lost 13. Stoke 17th in the table. So how has he kind of been viewed among Stoke supporters ahead of this game against Sunderland this weekend?
Well, I think when he came in, a lot of people questioned the timing because he was in a situation where he couldn't get any players. He just got to use Michael O'Neill's previous players. And he very clearly said from the start that he thought the squad was unbalanced. So I think he got a bit of credence and a bit of time through that. But now, of course, the results, you know what football fans are like, particularly up in your area of the world. If you don't get results, then people start to think you're no good. And he's not had the impact that Stoke fans expected. So I'd say at the moment, there's a few fans that wouldn't be bothered if he left the club. But there's a few fans that think he needs more time. So it's a very mixed response at the moment to Alex Neil.
When he went in there, myself included, and a lot of Sunderland fans would have thought that he would have sorted things out at Stoke and maybe they could have had a push towards the playoffs. He obviously did an excellent job at Sunderland last season, got them up from League One and lost just 1 in 18 games last season after coming in and then getting promoted by the playoffs. So what do you think has gone wrong there for him at Stoke?
I think one of the biggest problems, which Michael O'Neill also had, was the FFP cloud. They couldn't go out, and it's really sad when you've got billionaire owners who want to throw money at the club and they can't do it. And yeah, 2 or 3 managers ago, they threw money at it. It was wasted by a former manager. And Stoke have suffered the FFP problems since. So in Alex Neil's defence, he's not been able to do a lot of manoeuvring. And in the transfer window, he had to get rid of probably our best player, Harry Souttar, to make certain the books were balanced. And a young goalkeeper who had potential too, Joe Bursick. And he brought in loans. And now Stoke are in the position where we've got 7 loans. You can only have 5 in the matchday squad. So it's still unbalanced. And I think a lot of people will be very interested to see how he looks at the transfer window in the summer when, of course, Stoke can throw money at it again. I'm not sure Alex Neil has had too much money thrown at him in the past and he's worked on more of a shoestring budget. So hopefully he'll spend the money wisely. But in terms of defending Alex Neil, I think it's been a really difficult job. I think Michael O'Neill cleared the way for him to have a much better shot at what he's got. And Stoke fans will just be happy for this season to end with them still being in the Championship.
Well, you mentioned about him spending the money wisely. Publicly, he's saying he's got no regrets from leaving Sunderland to Stoke. And one of the main reasons, it seems, why he went to Stoke is that he'd have more control, maybe in terms of recruitment and running the club. So does it look that way, that it's going to be up to him on who he brings in and where the money's spent in the summer, and then probably having more of a go next season?
Well, I personally asked him that question. Why did you leave Sunderland to come to Stoke? Because you were just going up on a high. Stoke was still very much in a low. You've been through all those periods yourself for many years as Sunderland fans. So it's great for you to be doing well. But when he came to Stoke, I asked him why he'd left Sunderland. And he said because he thought the ownership was incredibly stable, that he would be given time to do what he needed to do, and he'd be given the money to do it and to run the club himself. And so far, it looks like he has been responsible for bringing in the technical director, who I believe is a very close friend of his, Ricky Martin, and the assistant manager, who obviously he's had with him for a long time, who's a friend of his too. So he does seem to be in charge of everything that's football related.
Just looking at matters on the pitch then, last season at Sunderland, when he came in midway through the season, he made them very difficult to beat at the back. But then at the start of this season, they really had a go at opponents and really tried to outscore them. So what has he kind of tried to do with this Stoke team? Is there an identity there? How are they kind of going to set up against Sunderland on Saturday, do you think?
Well, he'll kill me if I tell you how they're going to set up. But I think you'd be really surprised if he didn't go to try and limit the chances you have by being very solid at the back. Axel Tuanzebe played his first match for Stoke in the Cup midweek, and they set up very much to try and stifle Brighton. They were a really good team, and they managed to do it for the vast majority of the game. So I think he'll make us very difficult to beat, and I think he'll be very much looking to press and attack on the break. It's quite interesting. You'll know, Joe, that when Stoke have more possession, they lose. Stoke have had 70% possession in many matches this season and lost them. When they have about 30%, they tend to catch people on the break and win. So I think the best thing Stoke could do is give Sunderland the ball and just catch them on the break.
That's quite interesting. And Alex Neil will obviously know, coming to the Stadium of Light, a lot of teams last season came and made themselves very difficult to beat, tried to waste time when they could, try and kind of calm the crowd down, which I think will obviously be very lively with Neil returning there. So he'll know how to try and tame the crowd and try and limit Sunderland as well. But just looking at their formation, it looks like Stoke have been playing with a 4-2-3-1 in recent weeks. Is that how you set up, maybe?
Yeah, I think that's pretty certain how they will set up. And one of the biggest problems we've got is that we signed Dwight Gale, and Dwight Gale has played really well. He's played more midfield and then joined into the attack, to be fair to him. But he scored one goal, which actually was a shot that hit him and went in. He's had 6 chalked off, of which 5 were obviously goals, but VAR wasn't there to change them. He was called offside. So he's not firing. Jacob Brown's been playing a wing back. He's a forward, so he's been less effective. And Tyrese Campbell's blown very cold, not hot and cold. So when you're not scoring, the best thing you can do is stop other people scoring, and that's what he'll try and do.
You mentioned a few players there from Stoke City, but who are the kind of key players that Sunderland will have to watch out for and who could have a big impact on this game?
Josh Tymon will be an attacking wing half. He'll have a big impact on the game. The player that's played the best in the last few matches has been Josh Laurent. He's a really combative midfielder who will push forward and defend. Will Smallbone, who we have on loan, he's also quite good. And in defence, I'd be surprised if Tuanzebe doesn't start. And we've also got Kian Hoover, who's come in from Wolves and done a job too, alongside Ben Wilmot. And of course, the evergreen Phil Jagielka, who at 40 is even scoring as well as defending. So we've got a decent defence, an okay midfield, and a forward line that so far isn't working very well.
So you'd expect Jagielka to play, would you, on Saturday?
I think he may well start, yeah. I think he might start. But you've got this situation, as I say, where we've got 7 loans and only 5 can be in a matchday squad. So injuries have made that not a problem up to now. But now everybody's fit. It's going to be interesting to see how he copes with that.
Yeah, I was just reading earlier that probably most of Stoke's squad are going to be available for this game after kind of coming back from injury. They did obviously play that game on Tuesday against Brighton in the FA Cup. So are they coming maybe at a good time? Are they shaping up pretty well coming into this game, considering they maybe haven't had the best results, but they have got players coming back now, and maybe there's a few selection dilemmas for Neil ahead of the game?
Yeah, I think he will have the best squad he's had since he's been here to pick through injuries.
Yeah.
I also think, as you know, he's incredibly motivated to win every game. And like every manager, he'll want to do well against his former club. He will know already that the fans are going to give him a warm reception, but not a nice warm reception. And I'm sure he'll have the players fired up, ready to do him justice. So I'm looking forward to the game for 2 reasons. 1, to see the reception he gets and how he handles it. And 2, to see if Stoke can perform when they've got most of their players fit. It's going to be an interesting game. I mean, you've not had the best last few matches, so you'll also be wanting to do well. It has the matchup, all the hallmarks of a decent matchup.
Yeah, Sunderland obviously off the back of 2 consecutive defeats, they'll be looking to get back to winning ways. But I understand are you speaking to Alex Neil this afternoon for his press conference?
Yeah, his press conference is at 3:00 this afternoon. And I'm sure that not just myself will be asking him how he feels about going back to Sunderland. He was asked pre the Brighton game by another company how he felt, and post the Brighton game, and he said that he was really looking forward to it. He has some very fond memories of the club. So he's saying all the right things. But I'm sure deep down he'll be glad when the match is over.
Do you think he does have any regrets of moving to Stoke?
I'll say this, that if, as is reported, you've tripled your wages, I wouldn't have any regrets myself. Because, Joe, let's be honest, if somebody offered you, however good the echo is, if somebody offered you 3 times more your wages to go to Newcastle, you possibly would go. So I'm not going to ask you to answer that because you probably get taken off air. But I think it's very hard when football is such a cutthroat business, when you're given a chance to go and increase your salary, but also the Coates family, as you know, the owners of the football club, they do let managers do it themselves. They don't interfere. They virtually give them the keys to the castle and let them get on with it. And I don't think anybody wouldn't be impressed by that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's certainly that aspect of control and having more control over recruitment and certainly kind of the runnings of the club seems to be one of the big reasons why he did go there. But just kind of finishing off, Angela, we're just going to ask, we usually finish by asking our guests just for a quick score prediction, how we think the game is going to pan out on Saturday when Sunderland host Stoke at the Stadium of Light.
My head says Sunderland will win 2-0. My heart says Stoke will make a draw. I can't see Stoke getting anything more than, if they score, it'll be 1 goal and it'll be 1 each. So, you know, my heart's going for 1 each. But however it finishes up, I think the league is a much better league with Sunderland in it. I think your supporters are great, and I wish you all every success going forward after this weekend.
Mm-hmm. What have you made of Sunderland then this season? Have you seen much of them?
Yeah, I've watched quite a few of their games. I think they're a really good team. I'm quite surprised they're having this small blip. I hope they can get back. They're 8th at the moment, aren't they? I hope they can.
They're 9th in the table. Yeah.
I hope you can get back in the playoffs. I think the league this season is the most inconsistent league that I have known since Stoke have been in the Championship. And with the exception of a couple of clubs, I think anybody who puts a run together can still get in the playoffs from yourselves down to 11th or 12th. So I think there's every chance that you get in the playoffs, and I hope you go for it and get back to the promised land.
Mm-hmm. What do you think the aim is for Stoke now this season? Obviously, they're just looking at anything about 9 points clear of the relegation zone. Is it just have a good end to the season and build for next season?
I think he'll be looking to progress the team to build for next season. There are people saying if they could put a run together, they'd get in the playoffs. I think that's pie in the sky. It'll just be finish as high as you can. Joe, Stoke have not finished in the top half of the Championship since they got relegated. With the amount of money Stoke have thrown at players, that is just a great travesty. It's just remarkably bad positioning and employing of players by previous managers. Just proves that you can't throw money at football players and expect it to work. There'll be lots more examples. You've been there in the past where you bought players that just haven't worked out, and Stoke seem to have cornered the market on buying players that don't play well for them. So his recruitment's got to be spot on. I think if Stoke aren't around the top of the table by November, he'll be looking over his shoulder.
That's a pretty incredible stat, isn't it? I think it just shows how tough it is to get out of the Championship, similar as Sunderland found the last 4 years in League One, just how difficult it can be to get up. But we're obviously looking forward to the game on Saturday. Angela, thanks a lot for joining us on the latest episode of the Raw podcast. If you like what we do here at the Raw podcast, please consider subscribing on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcasts and leaving a review. For all the latest SAFC news, you can head over to the SAFC section of the Sunderland Echo website to find the thoughts of Sunderland head coach Tony Mowbray. He spoke to the media on Thursday morning, and we'll also have more build-up to Saturday's match. We'll also have live updates from the Stadium of Light as Sunderland take on Stoke City, as well as post-match reaction and analysis. So once again, thanks a lot for listening to the Raw podcast.